guys. I'm Heather Austrie, the social media manager for My Virtual Physician, and I'm also a mother to two beautiful little girls. I'm here today with our medical director and founder, Dr. David Howard. This is our first episode of our weekly educational series, Talk Tuesday, by myself and My Virtual Physician, which is a direct-to-consumer, multi-specialty telemedicine company that operates in multiple states. So every week we'll talk about a different medical condition and hopefully answer any questions you have about that condition.
Well, thanks, Heather, for putting this together. And today, we want to talk about postpartum depression.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit more about what postpartum depression is?
Yeah, postpartum depression is literally depression, but occurring in the context of the postpartum period. Really and truly, a better word is, perinatal depression, and that incorporates depression that occurs, within pregnancy and after pregnancy. So when we use the word postpartum depression a lot, but in many cases, depression actually starts during pregnancy, especially the latter part of pregnancy. And then in some women, it starts after delivery. But in a significant percentage of women, depression actually starts not afterwards, but it actually starts in the last trimester. So, beyond just postpartum depression, kind of a better word for it is really perinatal depression, because it incorporates depression occurring in the context of pregnancy and the postpartum period. Now, what is depression? Well, depression is obviously a psychological condition in which certain criteria have to be met. And so basically, there's many things. For example, change in your mood, decrease in anxiety, decrease in appetite, feeling like there's no hope. There's a whole series of symptoms, and you have to have at least a certain number of them to qualify as depression. And the symptoms that you have to qualify as depression, it's got to be present for at least 2 weeks, and it has to be affecting your life significantly, and it cannot be due to a traumatic event, because then that's just a reaction. So, if your mother passes away, then yeah, for the next couple of weeks, you're gonna probably not want to eat. You're gonna, just not feel good about yourself. You're gonna have all the symptoms of depression, but it's not depression because you were otherwise functioning fine just before your mom died. This is just an adjustment, it's a reaction. So, to qualify somebody as depression, the symptoms, the change in the mood, the talking slowly, the moving slowly, the being fidgety, the lack of appetite, the suicidal thoughts, obviously that's the most extreme symptoms, but it is a symptom. And obviously suicidal thoughts automatically trumps everything. If you have that, that pretty much puts you into severe depression. But all those symptoms, you have to have them for 2 weeks. They must be bothering you, affecting your life, affecting your ability to function, affecting your daily activities. And it must not be due to some recent tragedy, like a death in the family or your house burning down or something like that, because that's just a reaction. Because we're all human, so we're all expected to react when something tragic happens. But if nothing tragic is happening and you're feeling down, you're feeling suicidal, you're anxious, you don't want to eat, then clearly that's a sign now something is going on and you meet the criteria for depression. And so really, postpartum depression, perinatal depression, that's just basically, you still have to meet the criteria for depression, with the added requirement that it's occurring in the context of pregnancy and postpartum period.
Okay. And how common is postpartum depression?
Unfortunately, it's not very well tracked. We have estimates, but I'm not sure exactly how accurate those estimates are because what ends up happening to a lot of women is naturally they put the child first.
Right.
They don't, most women don't see their OBGYN until 6 weeks postpartum. And actually, a significant proportion of women actually never go back. A lot of women who just have a normal vaginal delivery never bother going back to their OBGYN. I know where I trained, our postpartum follow-up rate was like a third. Only a third of women actually came back. So because so few women actually come back for their postpartum visit, I don't know that we really know the true incidence of postpartum depression. But based on the surveys and studies that have been done to create an estimate, it's about 9%.
Oh, wow.
Both in America and in Europe, studies have estimated it at about 9%. So that's about 1 out of every 10.
Wow.
And that's just postpartum depression. So now, there's actually a gradient. You've got what's called postpartum blues, where the symptoms are more mild. They don't reach the definition of depression,
Okay.
but they're not normal. And so it's like you have some of the symptoms of depression, but not enough of them to qualify. And they don't affect your life as much. They don't affect your functioning as much. Because remember, again, one of the key criteria with depression is not just the symptoms, it's the fact that it's actually affecting your ability to function. And then you've got postpartum blues, you've got postpartum depression, and then you've actually got postpartum psychosis, which is the most severe form. And so, postpartum psychosis, those are people who need to be committed to the hospital and be
Okay.
inside the hospital. So postpartum depression itself, that's the middle one, postpartum depression, it's about 1 out of every 10. But if you add up women with postpartum blues, add up women with postpartum depression, add up women with postpartum psychosis, it's obviously going to be more than 10%,
Right.
but the true estimate is a little bit hard to imagine, but it's certainly common and it's underappreciated.
What would you say are the risk factors to postpartum depression?
There's a number of them, but the single biggest factor for postpartum depression is experiencing depressive symptoms while still pregnant. So
Okay.
women who start experiencing depressive symptoms during the pregnancy are at the highest risk of then continuing on after the pregnancy to continue to experience depressive symptoms. Women who already were suffering from depression before they got pregnant
Yep.
are also at extremely high risk. So basically, there's others that we could go through, but really to cut to the heart of it, women with psychiatric conditions, specifically depression, prior to and during pregnancy are at the highest risk of having depression after pregnancy in the postpartum period, after delivery.
Okay. Well, what would you say are the treatment options for these women going through this?
So it depends on the severity. So there's mild, like everything else in medicine, there's mild, moderate, and severe, right? So mild to moderate depression, the recommended treatment is actually psychotherapy.
Okay.
The evidence is pretty strong that it's pretty effective, and without the side effects of medications. So from mild to moderate depression, psychotherapy is considered the first choice.
Okay.
So basically talk therapy with a psychologist or psychiatrist. For severe depression, where it's really a lot more intrusive in terms of your daily functioning, it's recommended that medications now be considered to be started, antidepressants.
Okay.
And the two antidepressants that have the most, that are most well studied, are um, paroxetine and sertraline. So that's Zoloft and Paxil. Those are the common names. So those are the most common ones that are shown to be effective in women who are breastfeeding. And
Okay.
obviously, if you're not breastfeeding, you can also take those too. But in general, Zoloft, which is sertraline, and Paxil or paroxetine, those are the most common. Those are the most effective of all the ones that are studied. Those have the most studies in terms of attesting to their effectiveness.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for all of this information today. Guys, this has been Talk Tuesday with my virtual physician. For more information on postpartum depression, as well as a ton of other things, please visit our website, www.myvirtualphysician.com. Thank you, Dr. Howard. I've learned so much today, and I hope our audience has too.